Is driving around by yourself in the early morning hours with no destination an acceptable alibi? Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky. And today I want to talk a little bit about Bryan Kohberger's alibi. Now, a lot of people would say that Bryan Kohberger's alibi, that he was just driving around in the middle of the night by himself without any destination, was kind of flimsy. And a lot of people would say that really that's no alibi at all. It does seem like a very general alibi. You know, Bryan Kohberger stated that he was just driving around that night. He didn't give any specifics. So he basically left his alibi pretty much wide open, which in my opinion is pretty smart because there's different directions that Bryan Kohberger can go with this alibi. Now, it does appear to be a weak alibi, but is it any more weak than the alibis that were given by some of the individuals who were the last people to see these victims alive? Let's talk about Bethany's alibi. Bethany was actually in the house when these crimes occurred. And Bethany stated to law enforcement that she slept through the whole thing. So while 4 of her roommates were brutally losing their lives just upstairs from her bedroom, she claims she didn't hear anything and she slept through the entire thing, which is kind of strange because we know now that Bethany's phone was sharing data with Dylan's phone at the same time that these crimes were occurring, allegedly. So let's talk about Dylan's alibi. Dylan was also inside the house when these crimes were occurring. Now, Dylan's alibi is that she was also sleeping. She was trying to sleep, but the quadruple homicide that was happening right above her bedroom, as well as 15 feet outside her bedroom door on the same level, just kept waking her up. So Dylan does state that she did open her door a number of times because she heard this noise, and she did look out to check and see what was going on. Now, Dylan didn't see anything the first few times that she opened her door, but the last time she opened her door, she happened to see the intruder. Now, let's not forget that Dylan started on the ground floor in the very beginning, and somehow she moved up to the second floor, and that's where she was able to see this intruder, which worked out great for law enforcement's timeline. So Bethany and Dylan's alibis, the 2 girls who were inside the house while these crimes were occurring, was that they were asleep. And neither one of them can confirm each other's alibi. So are Dylan and Bethany's alibis any better than Bryan Kohberger's? I mean, they were actually inside the house when these crimes were occurring, but they were sleeping. Now, let's talk about Jack S. You know, Jack S. was one of the last people to see Maddie and Kaylee when they were alive. Jack S. can be seen at the corner club on the security footage. He can also be seen hanging around the girls at the grub truck. Now, the girls ended up ditching Jack S. at the grub truck and jumping into a private ride. And after that happened, Jack S. claims that he left and he decided to drive 5 hours to his parents' cabin. at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, nobody can really confirm that Jack S. drove to his parents' cabin because he was by himself. So just as Bryan Kohberger was out driving around that night, so was Jack S. Now let's talk about Eric G., the private driver who picked up Maddie and Kaylee from the grub truck. Now, Steve Gonsalves, in some of his earlier interviews in the very beginning, made it very clear that this was a private driver. He also made it sound like this driver was somebody he knew. He made it sound like this driver was kind of a friend of the family. But when Olivia Gonsalves talks about this private driver, she made it sound like she didn't know Eric G. at all, and that she had to actually search out this driver so that she could confirm what time Kaylee and Maddie were dropped off. Now, Eric G. made some conflicting statements, in my opinion. He said that he didn't pull into the driveway at the King Road house to drop off Kaylee and Maddie because he was worried about possibly getting robbed. But then he also says in the next statement that he dropped the girls off in front of the house and didn't watch them walk in because he didn't feel like there was any danger because it was a very safe area. So that's kind of strange. Was he worried about getting robbed, or was it a safe area? Now, Eric G. also stated that when he was driving Maddie and Kaylee home, that they didn't talk anything about boys or any type of drama, that they were just excited to get home and eat their pasta. Eric G. gave some very strange interviews, in my opinion. He almost just seemed too animated. He almost just seemed like he was too animated about the deaths of Kaylee and Maddie during these interviews. Eric G. is also allegedly married to someone who works with Moscow PD. So Eric's wife works for Moscow PD. It's also reported that Eric G. lived 1,200 feet from Bryan Kohberger's front door in Pullman, Washington. So that's kind of strange. But Eric's alibi was that he dropped the girls off at home, drove off, didn't watch them walk into the house because they were in a very safe area, and then he drove around and ended up going to Taco Bell. So Eric G. says when he saw the news about these crimes, that he knew that he had been in that area. So he immediately went to law enforcement and provided them with digital information and a receipt from Taco Bell, and Eric G. was cleared. Something else that I thought was kind of strange about this private driver was that there was reports that he didn't charge these people to drive them home, that he was just out driving around taking drunk college students home. I thought that was kind of weird at first, but then I was told something that made a lot of sense. And that was that the University of Idaho gives grants to students to go out and drive drunk college students home. So it's very possible that although Eric G. wasn't being paid by the students to drive them home, it's very possible that he did receive a grant from the college to drive students home who had been drinking. I think that's a great concept. So it's very possible that that's the reason that he was out driving college students around. And last but not least, let's talk about Jack D. Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. Now, allegedly, Kaylee broke off the relationship with Jack D just 3 weeks prior to these crimes. Kaylee and Jack D had dated for years in high school. And now Kaylee was moving to Texas. So this was kind of a bitter end for Jack D and Kaylee. They shared a dog together, Murphy, so they were still friends. But Jack D's family stated that he was crushed. And now Kaylee was moving away to Texas. Also, Kaylee and Maddie had tried to call Jack D 10 times between 2:26 a.m. and 2:52 a.m. Now, Olivia Gonsalves confirmed that Maddie and Kaylee were trying to call Jack D. And I think that's important because nowadays, most people just text. Nowadays, most people just go through text messenger. So it makes me wonder if these calls were urgent. And that's why they were calling Jack D rather than just trying to message him. It would seem to me that calling someone 10 times is rather urgent. Now, Kaylee and Maddie didn't get any response from Jack D because apparently his alibi was that he was at home sleeping. Now, his roommates also stated that Jack D was home asleep. They were playing video games and he never left the house. So, all of these people were basically sleeping, with the exception of Jack S. and Eric G., the private driver. They were driving around. But is the alibi that I was sleeping any stronger than Bryan Kohberger's alibi that he was just driving around? Bethany and Dylan, they can't confirm their alibis because they were sleeping, apparently. Jack S., nobody can really confirm his alibi because he was driving 5 hours at 2 a.m. up to his parents' cabin. Now, Eric G., his alibi was confirmed with a Taco Bell receipt. And Jack D., his alibi was confirmed by his friends, who said that they were playing video games while Jack D. was asleep. Now, something else I want to say about Jack D. is a lot of people believe that he was the individual who Maddie and Kaylee are seen talking to in the corner club footage. The person in this video does look very similar to Jack D. But if this is Jack D., then this would kind of blow his alibi out of the water, because it would seem strange that Jack D. left the corner club and then just ran straight home and jumped in bed and went to sleep. But these are the alibis. So really, none of them are strong alibis. It's possible that Eric G., had the information to confirm what he was saying to law enforcement. But none of these people, who were the last individuals to see these victims alive before their lives were taken, really had strong alibis. I don't feel like their alibis were any stronger than Bryan Kohberger's alibi. So, a lot of people believe that Bryan Kohberger's alibi was not an alibi at all. But if you compare his alibi to the rest of the alibis, it doesn't seem that far-fetched. But all of these people were cleared really quickly. So law enforcement cleared these people almost immediately. So are their alibis any stronger than Bryan Kohberger's alibi? It seems to me like none of their alibis were really that strong. So I'm curious, what do you think? Do you believe that driving around in the middle of the night by yourself with no destination is an alibi? And do you think that the other alibis were strong alibis? You know, alibis that would make law enforcement clear these individuals immediately. Now, please stay tuned for my next video, and please like and subscribe to my channel if you like my content. I really do appreciate it. We'll see you next time.